I watched him freeze, glass of champagne still suspended mid-air, those familiar hazel eyes widening in recognition. After 4 years, 3 months, and 16 days, Mitchell Reeves still had the same tell, the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth when something threw him off balance. Iris? His voice carried across the upscale restaurant, turning several heads at nearby tables. I pretended not to hear him, smiling instead at Colin Davidson, Mitchell's boss, though I'd conveniently neglected to mention that connection when he'd asked me out last week. "Is everything all right?" Colin asked, his brow furrowing with concern. "Perfect," I assured him, raising my wine glass. "Just thought I heard someone call my name." The lie slipped easily from my lips. I'd gotten good at those in the years since Mitchell had walked out of our apartment and into the arms of his colleague. I'd practiced the art of appearing unaffected, of crafting a narrative where his absence was a blessing rather than a wound that refused to heal. Colin smiled, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around us. "To new beginnings," he said, clinking his glass against mine. From the corner of my eye, I watched Mitchell set his drink down with enough force to slosh champagne onto the pristine tablecloth. His date, a willowy blonde with a laugh that carried, placed a manicured hand on his arm, her expression questioning. He shook his head, murmuring something that made her glance in our direction. I forced myself to focus on Colin, on his animated description of the architectural project that had first brought us together at the gallery fundraiser. He was everything Mitchell wasn't: thoughtful, attentive, present. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me that Mitchell had spent years climbing the corporate ladder at Davidson Industries, and here I was, dining with the very man he'd been so desperate to impress. "Iris." The voice came from directly beside our table this time. I looked up to find Mitchell standing there, his expression a complex mixture of shock and something else I couldn't quite identify. "Mitchell," I acknowledged, keeping my voice deliberately light. "What a surprise. I thought that was you." His eyes flickered to Colin, confusion giving way to recognition. "Mr. Davidson, I didn't realize you were." "Reeves, isn't it?" Colin stood, extending his hand. "From the Singapore expansion team?" Mitchell nodded, shaking Colin's hand with a grip that whitened his knuckles. "Yes, sir. I didn't realize you and Iris were." He left the sentence dangling, a question mark hovering in the air between us. "We met at the Westmore Gallery benefit," Colin supplied, his hand coming to rest lightly on my shoulder. Iris's photographs were the highlight of the exhibition. Mitchell's eyes darted to my face. "You're showing your work again?" The surprise in his voice needled me. As if I'd been incapable of pursuing my passion without his encouragement. As if the dreams I'd put on hold during our relationship had been abandoned rather than simply deferred. "For the past 2 years," I replied, the edge in my voice unmistakable. "You should check out the exhibition. It runs through next month." His date appeared beside him then, a vision in a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Aren't you going to introduce me, darling?" Her voice was honeyed, her smile practiced. Mitchell cleared his throat. "Vanessa, this is Iris Calloway. An old friend. And Mr. Davidson, our CEO." Vanessa's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose fractionally at that last part, her smile becoming more genuine as she extended her hand to Colin. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Davidson. Mitchell speaks so highly of you." "All good things, I hope," Colin replied with the easy charm that had first drawn me to him. "Iris and I were together for 6 years, Mitchell blurted out, his words hanging awkwardly in the air. Vanessa's smile faltered. Colin's hand tensed on my shoulder. "Ancient history," I said smoothly, placing my hand over Colin's. We haven't seen each other in what, for years? For years, 3 months, Mitchell replied, then stopped abruptly, as if catching himself. A heavy silence descended, broken only by the ambient sounds of the restaurant, crystal clinking, soft laughter from other tables, the muted strains of jazz from hidden speakers. Well, Colin finally said, his voice noticeably cooler, it was nice running into you, Reeves. We should let you get back to your dinner. Mitchell stood his ground, his gaze fixed on me. Could we talk? Privately? I'm in the middle of dinner, Mitchell. Please, Iris. 5 minutes. The desperation in his voice surprised me. Mitchell had always been the composed one, the rational counterweight to my emotional storms. Seeing him flustered was like witnessing an eclipse, rare and vaguely unsettling. Colin squeezed my shoulder. It's fine if you need a moment. I hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes, I agreed, rising from my chair. Mitchell led me toward the restaurant's terrace, a secluded space overlooking the city skyline. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain-washed streets and distant jasmine. We stood side by side at the railing, an arm's length apart, staring out at the glittering cityscape. You look good, Iris, he said finally. Really good. You sound surprised. He winced. I didn't mean. What do you want, Mitchell? I cut him off, unwilling to prolong this unexpected reunion. He ran a hand through his hair, another familiar gesture that sent an unwelcome pang through me. I've been trying to reach you. Have you? I raised an eyebrow. My number hasn't changed. Your emails keep bouncing back. Your social media is private. I drove by your old place last month, but someone else lives there now. The thought of him searching for me, driving past the apartment we'd once shared, stirred something complicated in my chest. You could have tried harder if it was important. It is important. He turned to face me fully. Seeing you tonight, with Davidson, of all people, I realize I can't wait any longer. Wait for what, exactly? To tell you I made a mistake. The words tumbled out in a rush. The biggest mistake of my life. Leaving you, leaving us, it was insane, Iris. I've regretted it every day since. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. For years of silence, and now this? Because he'd seen me with his boss? Let me understand, I said slowly. You walked out on 6 years together for your coworker. No discussion, no warning, just a note and half-empty closets. Radio silence for 4 years. And now, suddenly, you've had an epiphany because you saw me having dinner with Colin? He had the grace to look ashamed. It's not sudden. I've been trying to work up the courage for months. But seeing you with him, his jaw tightened. You don't know what he's like, Iris. His reputation with women. That's rich, coming from you. I laughed, the sound brittle even to my own ears. You're worried about my virtue now? For years too late, don't you think? I'm worried about you, he insisted. Davidson goes through women like seasonal collections. He's my boss, Iris. I've seen the way he operates. So this is what, exactly? Professional courtesy? Warning the ex about the big bad wolf? Mitchell stepped closer. This is me telling you I still love you. That I never stopped. That leaving you was the worst decision I ever made. The declaration hung between us, weightier than the humid night air. Part of me, a small, traitorous part one thought I'd excised long ago, thrilled at the words. The rest of me remembered the devastation of waking up to find his side of the bed empty, of reading that cowardly note, of piecing myself back together one painful day at a time. "Your 5 minutes are up," I said quietly. His face fell. "Iris." "No." I stepped back, creating distance between us. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to waltz back into my life when it's convenient for you and expect me to, what? Fall into your arms? Forgive and forget?" "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "Not yet. I'm asking for a chance. One conversation. Properly, not like this. I'm seeing someone, Mitchell. Someone who respects me. Davidson doesn't respect women. He collects them." Anger flared, hot and sudden. "You don't know anything about my life anymore. That's the choice you made. So don't stand there judging mine when you're the one who threw away what we had." I turned to leave, but his next words stopped me cold. "I know about the baby, Iris." My heart stuttered. I turned slowly, finding his expression grave, his eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored the ache I'd carried for years. "What did you say?" My voice was barely audible over the pounding in my ears. "I know you were pregnant when I left. I know about the miscarriage." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. No one knew about that, no one except my sister Eliza, who'd been there to hold me through the darkest days of my life. "How?" I whispered. "Eliza told me. Last month. I ran into her at that coffee place you both liked. He swallowed hard. She was pretty clear about what my leaving did to you." I could imagine exactly how clear my protective older sister had been. The thought of Mitchell and Eliza discussing the most painful chapter of my life made me feel ill. "That's private," I managed finally. "You had no right." "I had every right," he countered, his voice breaking. "It was my child too, Iris. A child I never knew existed until it was gone." The unfairness of his statement stole my breath. "A child you abandoned, whether you knew about it or not. You left, Mitchell. You don't get to claim grief after the fact." "I'm not claiming anything except my own culpability," he said quietly. "I'm trying to tell you that I understand, now, what I destroyed. Not just us, but a family. Our family." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the mild evening. "Why are you doing this? Tonight, of all nights?" "Because I meant what I said. I never stopped loving you. And seeing you with Davidson," he shook his head. "I can't stand by and watch you get hurt again." "Again," I repeated, the word like ash on my tongue. "Interesting choice of words, considering you're the one who hurt me." "I know." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the familiar scent of his cologne, sandalwood and something distinctly him. "And I will spend the rest of my life making that up to you, if you'll let me." The door to the terrace opened, and Colin appeared, his expression concerned. "Everything all right out here?" Mitchell straightened, his professional mask slipping back into place. "Mr. Davidson." "Yes, just catching up with an old friend." Colin came to stand beside me, his presence both comforting and complicated in light of Mitchell's revelations. "Iris? Ready to continue our evening?" I looked between them, the man who'd broken my heart and disappeared, and the man who'd been nothing but attentive since we'd met. The easy choice would be to walk away with Colin, to continue the evening as planned, to leave Mitchell and his belated confessions in the past where they belonged. But I'd spent 4 years wondering why. Why he'd left, why he hadn't loved me enough to stay, why the life we'd built together had meant so little to him. Now he was offering answers, and warnings, I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. "Actually," I said slowly, I think I need a rain check, Colin. Surprise flickered across his face. Of course. Is everything okay? Just some unfinished business I need to address. I glanced at Mitchell, whose expression remained carefully neutral. I'll call you tomorrow? Colin nodded, though I could see the questions in his eyes. He leaned in to kiss my cheek, the gesture deliberate, marking territory. Looking forward to it. After he'd gone, Mitchell and I stood in charged silence. You're having dinner with me instead? He finally asked, hope threading through his voice. No. I reached for my purse, extracting a business card, simple, elegant, with my studio address embossed in silver. Tomorrow. My studio. 7 o'clock. We'll talk. He took the card, his fingers brushing mine. Thank you, Iris. Don't thank me yet, I warned him. I'm not promising anything except a conversation. It's more than I deserve. I studied him, this man who'd once been the center of my world, now a stranger wearing a familiar face. Yes, I agreed. It is. As I walked away, I felt his eyes on me, heavy with unspoken words and belated regrets. Tomorrow, I would listen to what he had to say. Tomorrow, I would decide whether the past deserved a second audience. But tonight I needed to be alone with my thoughts, to examine the scars I'd convinced myself had healed, and to prepare for whatever truths Mitchell Reeves had finally found the courage to tell. My studio was my sanctuary, a converted warehouse space with soaring ceilings, exposed brick walls, and windows that captured the perfect northern light. It was here, among my cameras and prints, that I'd rebuilt myself after Mitchell left, transforming pain into art, heartbreak into a career that sustained not just my finances but my soul. I arrived early the next day, nervous energy propelling me through mindless preparation tasks. I straightened prints, rearranged furniture, made and remade coffee. By 6:30, the space was immaculate, and I'd changed outfits 3 times, settling finally on a simple black dress that projected confidence I didn't entirely feel. At 6:58, there was a knock at the door. Mitchell stood on the threshold, looking both familiar and foreign in his tailored suit, holding a small package wrapped in brown paper. I wasn't sure if I should bring wine or flowers, he said by way of greeting. Neither seemed right. What did you bring instead? I asked, gesturing him inside. He handed me the package. Something I should have given you a long time ago. I set it aside, unwilling to be distracted by whatever gesture he'd deemed appropriate. Let's talk first. Mitchell nodded, following me to the sitting area I'd created near the windows. He glanced around, taking in the space that was so thoroughly mine, the wall of portraits, the abstract landscapes, the various cameras displayed like sculptures on antique tables. This is incredible, Iris, he said softly. Your talent, it's evolved. People change in 4 years, I replied, pouring us each a glass of water. They grow. Some do. He accepted the glass, his fingers brushing mine. Others just exist. I settled across from him, maintaining a careful distance. Let's cut to the chase, Mitchell. You said you've been trying to reach me. Why now? What changed? He set his glass down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. About 8 months ago, I was in Tokyo for work. Huge deal, career-making presentation. His eyes found mine. I nailed it. Biggest success of my professional life. And the first person I wanted to call was you. I kept my expression neutral, though his words tugged at something deep inside me. How many times in the early days after he'd left had I reached for my phone to share something with him, only to remember he was gone? That's when I knew I'd been lying to myself, he continued. Pretending I was over you. Pretending leaving was the right decision. So you started looking for me 8 months ago? He nodded. At first, just online. Social media, mutual friends. Then more actively, your old email, your parents' place in Connecticut. He ran a hand through his hair. I even hired a private investigator. That shocked me. You hired someone to track me down? I was desperate. He leaned back, his expression a mixture of shame and defiance. None of my other attempts were working. Then last month, I ran into Eliza. Yes, you mentioned that. Still not clear on why she'd tell you anything after what you did. She didn't at first, he admitted. She threw her coffee at me, actually. Called me every name in the book. That sounded like my sister. Fierce, protective Eliza who'd picked up the pieces after Mitchell shattered my world. I deserved worse, he continued. But once she'd gotten that out of her system, she agreed to hear me out. I told her everything, why I left, what happened after. When she realized I was serious about making amends, she told me about the baby. The cavalier way he referenced it made my chest tighten. Not the baby, our child, the tiny life that had been growing inside me when he walked out, the heartbeat that had stopped just weeks later as if in sympathy with my broken heart. Why did you leave, Mitchell? The question emerged softer than I intended, vulnerability leaking through. He was quiet for a long moment, gathering himself. I was afraid, he finally said. Afraid of failing you. Afraid I wasn't good enough. Trevor Mitchell Reeves 3, constantly trying to live up to his father's and grandfather's legacies. I knew this story, had held him through the nightmares about his father's expectations, had celebrated with him when he finally secured the job at Davidson Industries that might, someday, lead to the corner office his father had always occupied before his ignominious fall from grace. We were happy, I reminded him. At least, I thought we were. We were, he agreed. But there was this voice in my head, my father's voice, always telling me I was settling. That I could do better, be better. Davidson represented everything my father lost, everything he wanted me to reclaim. So you left me to focus on your career? I asked incredulously. That's your explanation? No. He shook his head. I left because Kayla, the woman I left with, she was connected. Her father sat on Davidson's board. She promised to fast-track my career if we were together. The admission landed like a blow. You left me for a networking opportunity? Mitchell's face contorted with shame. When you say it like that. How else should I say it? I stood, suddenly unable to sit still. You abandoned our life together for a woman who could advance your career. You broke my heart for a promotion. It wasn't that simple, he protested. I was drowning in my father's expectations, in my own insecurities. Kayla represented a way out, a shortcut to becoming the man I thought I needed to be. And did it work? I demanded, pacing before the windows. Did she deliver on her promises? A bitter laugh escaped him. For a while. I got the promotion, the corner office, the Singapore team. Then her father retired from the board, and suddenly I wasn't as interesting to her anymore. So she left you? No. His voice was quiet. I ended it about a year after we got together. I realized what I'd done, what I'd given up for a job. But by then, I couldn't find you. It was like you'd disappeared. I did disappear, I replied. After the miscarriage, I couldn't stay in that apartment, surrounded by memories of us, of what could have been. Eliza helped me find this place. I started over. Mitchell stood, crossing to where I stood. Iris, if I had known you were pregnant, would it have changed anything? I challenged him. Would you have stayed? Yes, he said without hesitation. I never would have left. The certainty in his voice only fueled my anger. So you would have stayed out of obligation, not love. No, that's not. It is, I insisted. You just admitted you left because your career was more important than our relationship. Adding a baby to the equation wouldn't have changed your priorities, just made you feel trapped. He reached for me, but I stepped back. You're twisting my words. Am I? You're only here now because you saw me with Colin. Admit it, seeing me with your boss triggered some possessive instinct. This isn't about love, Mitchell. It's about ownership. That's not true, he argued, his composure slipping. Yes, seeing you with Davidson accelerated my timeline, but I was already looking for you. I've been looking for months. Convenient timing. Mitchell raked both hands through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. Damn it, Iris, I'm trying to be honest with you. Yes, I made a horrific mistake. Yes, my priorities were completely twisted. But I'm here now, telling you the truth, trying to make this right. Some things can't be made right, I said, the words catching in my throat. Some wounds don't heal. I know, he said softly. I know what I destroyed. But I have to try. I have to at least tell you how sorry I am, how much I still love you. The words hung between us, a fragile bridge over a chasm too wide to cross. Open the package, he said after a moment. I glanced at the forgotten parcel on the coffee table. Mitchell. Please. Reluctantly, I retrieved it, peeling back the brown paper to reveal a small wooden box, handcrafted, its surface inlaid with mother-of-pearl in a pattern I recognized immediately, a constellation. Specifically, Cepheus, the king. My hands trembled as I opened the lid. Inside, nestled on blue velvet, lay a ring I thought I'd never see again, platinum band, oval opal surrounded by tiny diamonds. My grandmother's engagement ring, the one I'd returned to him the day after he left, tucked into an envelope with my keys to our apartment. You kept it? I whispered, unable to tear my eyes from the ring that had once symbolized our future. I couldn't let it go, he admitted. Even at my lowest point, some part of me knew I'd made a terrible mistake. That ring was my penance, my reminder. I closed the box, setting it carefully on the table. I can't accept this. I'm not asking you to wear it again, Mitchell clarified. Not yet. I'm returning what was always meant to be yours. Your grandmother's legacy. The gesture struck a chord deeper than I wanted to admit. I'd mourned the loss of that ring almost as much as the loss of Mitchell himself, the last physical connection to a grandmother who'd believed in fairy tales and happy endings. Thank you, I said stiffly. For returning it. Iris. Mitchell stepped closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his hazel eyes. I know I hurt you beyond words. I know I don't deserve a second chance. But I'm asking, begging, for the opportunity to show you I've changed. That I understand now what really matters. And what is that? I challenged him. Love, he said simply. Not career advancement or parental approval or societal expectations. Just love. The kind we had, the kind I threw away. I was saved from responding by the buzz of my phone. Glancing at the screen, I saw Colin's name. You should answer it, Mitchell said, stepping back. I've taken enough of your time. I hesitated, then declined the call. We're not finished here. Hope flickered across his face. Does that mean? It means I still have questions, I clarified. Why should I believe anything you're saying? How do I know this isn't just another impulsive decision you'll regret later? Because I've had 4 years to think about it, he replied. 4 years of waking up in an empty bed, reaching for someone who isn't there. 4 years of achievement that feels hollow because I can't share it with you. His words echoed my own experience with painful accuracy. And what about Colin? I asked, testing him. You seemed pretty concerned about my seeing him. Mitchell's jaw tightened. Davidson has a reputation, Iris. He dates women from the company, makes promises, then discards them when he gets bored. I've seen it happen 3 times in the last year alone. So you're warning me as a public service? I'm warning you because I still care about you, he corrected. Because no matter what happens between us, I don't want to see you hurt again, especially not by someone like him. I studied him, trying to discern the truth in his words. And if I told you I'm in love with him? A flash of pain crossed Mitchell's face before he could mask it. Then I'd wish you happiness, he said quietly. Even if it killed me to do it. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. This was a side of Mitchell I'd rarely seen, vulnerable, exposed, without the carefully constructed facade he presented to the world. I'm not in love with him, I admitted after a moment. We've only been on a few dates. Relief flickered in his eyes, quickly replaced by determination. Let me take you to dinner. A real dinner, not this, he gestured around my studio, ambush. This was your ambush, not mine, I reminded him. Fair point. He smiled tentatively. Dinner, then? As a start? I should have said no. Logic, self-preservation, the scar tissue around my heart, all of it screamed at me to send him away, to protect myself from the possibility of being hurt again. But beneath that caution stirred something else, curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe just the simple, human need for closure. One dinner, I agreed finally. That's all I'm promising. His smile widened, genuine and warm. That's more than I hoped for. Thank you, Iris. As he reached for his coat, my phone buzzed again, Colin, calling back. This time, I answered. Iris, Colin's voice was smooth as polished marble. I've been thinking about you. About last night. I hope everything's sorted out with your friend. I glanced at Mitchell, who was studiously examining one of my photographs, pretending not to listen. It's a work in progress, I replied neutrally. Good. Because I'd very much like to see you again. Tomorrow night, perhaps? I have reservations at Le Cirque. Le Cirque, the impossible-to-book French restaurant where celebrities and politicians dined. Of course Colin Davidson would have standing reservations. I'm not sure I'm free tomorrow, I hedged. The day after, then, he persisted. Or this weekend. I'm flexible. I could feel Mitchell's attention on me, though his back remained turned. I'll check my schedule and let you know, I said finally. Perfect. I look forward to it. Colin's voice dropped an octave. And Iris? I hope you know how special last night was. The connection between us, it's rare. The words were perfectly chosen, practiced even. I wondered suddenly how many women had heard similar sentiments from him. Was Mitchell right about Colin's pattern with women? I'll call you tomorrow, I promised, ending the call. Mitchell turned, his expression carefully neutral. Le Cirque? Impressive. Ostentatious, I corrected. A smile tugged at his lips. The old Iris would have said that. I am the old Iris, I replied. Just with better boundaries and more expensive camera equipment. He laughed then, the sound so achingly familiar it made my chest hurt. Friday night, he suggested. For our dinner? I nodded, ignoring the voice in my head questioning my sanity. Friday. 8 o'clock. You can pick the place, but nowhere too fancy. I know just the spot. He moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. Thank you, Iris. For hearing me out. For giving me a chance I don't deserve. I haven't given you anything yet, I reminded him. It's just dinner. I know. The look he gave me was filled with a complex mixture of hope and regret. But it's a start. After he left, I sat for a long time, staring at the wooden box containing my grandmother's ring. The constellation inlaid on its surface seemed to shimmer in the fading light. Cepheus, the king. I remembered the night Mitchell had told me the story behind it, how my grandmother had chosen that constellation because her husband, my grandfather, had made her feel like a queen. Mitchell had given me that ring on a snowy night in December, kneeling before the fireplace in our apartment, promising forever. Less than 2 years later, he was gone, leaving nothing but a note that said, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. You deserve better. What did it mean that he'd kept the ring all this time? That he'd brought it back now, when our paths had crossed unexpectedly after years apart? And what did it say about me that despite everything, despite the pain and betrayal, a part of me still responded to him? Still remembered the way his laugh used to feel like sunshine, the way his arms had been home. My phone buzzed again, a text from Eliza. Checking in. Did he show up? I hesitated, then typed, yes. We talked. Her response was immediate, and? I don't know, I replied honestly. Having dinner with him Friday. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her message came through. Be careful, Iris. Heart's easier to break the second time. But I'm here for you no matter what. I stared at her words, the truth in them settling like a weight. Was I setting myself up for more heartbreak by agreeing to see Mitchell again? Or would this dinner provide the closure I'd never properly had? Only time would tell. But as I finally gathered my things and prepared to leave, I found myself slipping the wooden box into my bag, unable to leave it behind. Some ghosts, it seemed, weren't ready to be exorcised just yet. The days leading up to Friday felt endless, each hour stretching into eternity as I alternated between anticipation and dread. I threw myself into work, spending long hours in the studio, as if the focused attention required for photography could somehow drown out the clamoring voices in my head. Colin called twice, each conversation flowing with the practiced charm that had initially attracted me to him. There was something comforting about his confidence, the way he seemed so certain about everything, including his interest in me. We made plans for Sunday brunch, a compromise that allowed me to avoid committing to a more intimate dinner date. I have to admit, he said during our second call, I'm curious about your history with Mitchell Reeves. He's been with the company for years, but I've never seen him so unsettled. The fishing expedition was thinly veiled, and I chose my words carefully. We were together for a long time. It ended badly. Ancient history. Not so ancient, judging by his reaction to seeing us together. Colin's voice carried a hint of possessiveness that raised a small red flag in my mind. He's been distracted at work all week. Made a critical error in the Nakamura presentation yesterday. I hadn't expected that detail, the confirmation that seeing me had truly shaken Mitchell's composure. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be, Colin replied smoothly. It's illuminating to see where people's priorities truly lie. In business, distractions can be costly. The subtle threat underlying his words made me uncomfortable. I hope you're not holding him accountable for a personal matter. Business is personal, Iris. His tone shifted, becoming lighter. But enough about work. I'm looking forward to Sunday. There's a private exhibit at the Thorne Gallery I thought we might visit afterward. The conversation moved on, but Colin's calculated interest in Mitchell lingered in my mind. Was he genuinely concerned about an employee's performance, or was there something more territorial at play? Friday arrived with merciful swiftness. Mitchell had texted the address of the restaurant, a place I didn't recognize in a neighborhood I rarely frequented. I dressed with careful consideration, settling on a deep blue wrap dress that was neither too casual nor too formal, applying just enough makeup to enhance without overwhelming. The restaurant turned out to be a small Italian place tucked between a bookstore and a vintage record shop. No valet parking, no line of sleek cars outside, no maitre d' to greet patrons. Just a weathered wooden door with peeling green paint and a small, hand-lettered sign, Francesca's. I found Mitchell waiting inside, his tall frame somehow fitting perfectly in the intimate space. When he saw me, his face lit up with a smile that hit me like a physical force, warm, genuine, nothing like the polished expressions he'd worn at the corporate functions I'd accompanied him to years ago. You found it, he said, standing to greet me. It wasn't easy, I admitted, settling into the chair he held out for me. I had to double-check the address twice. It's a bit of a hidden gem, he agreed. Family-owned, 3 generations. The best risotto in the city. I glanced around at the mismatched tables, the faded murals of the Italian countryside, the candles flickering in wine bottles. Not exactly Davidson Industries caliber. A shadow crossed his face. That's why I chose it. I wanted somewhere real. Somewhere without pretense. Before I could respond, an elderly woman with salt and pepper hair pulled into a loose bun approached our table. Mitchell. A passato troppo tempo. She enveloped him in an enthusiastic hug before turning curious eyes to me. Francesca, this is Iris, Mitchell said, his Italian accent surprisingly good. Iris, this is Francesca, the heart and soul of this place. Ah, la bella Iris. Francesca clasped my hands in her warm, flower-dusted ones. Mitchell ha parlato molto di te. I looked questioningly at Mitchell, who had the grace to look embarrassed. She says I've talked about you a lot. You speak Italian now? I asked after Francesca had bustled away, promising to bring us her best offerings. I started taking classes a few years ago, he explained, pouring me a glass of wine from the carafe Francesca had left. After everything fell apart with Kayla, I needed something different. Something that had nothing to do with corporate ladders or family expectations. I studied him across the table, this man both familiar and strange. So you chose Italian? My grandmother was Italian, he reminded me. I used to listen to her talk to my grandfather when I was little, never understanding the words but loving the sound. He traced the rim of his glass, eyes distant with memory. After I lost you, I started remembering things she used to say about regret, il rimpianto e il peso più pesante de portar. Which means, regret is the heaviest burden to carry. The meal that followed was unlike anything I'd expected, rich, authentic food served family style, conversation that flowed with surprising ease. Mitchell told me about his grandmother's influence, his father's recent stroke that had forced a reckoning between them, the volunteering he'd begun at a youth center teaching photography, a passion we'd once shared. You kept it up, I said, genuinely surprised. The photography. It was my connection to you, he admitted softly. The one part of us I couldn't bear to lose completely. As the evening drew to a close, we stepped outside into the gentle spring night, the air carrying the scent of distant rain. Thank you for tonight, Mitchell said, his fingers lightly brushing mine. For giving me this chance. I met his gaze, searching for any sign of the man who had walked away 4 years ago. What I found instead was someone humbled, changed by time and consequence. I'm seeing Colin on Sunday, I said, needing him to understand where we stood. He nodded, disappointment flickering briefly before acceptance settled in its place. I understand. But I'd like to talk again, I added, surprising myself with the truth of it. Not promises, not expectations. Just conversation. Mitchell's smile bloomed slowly, genuinely. I'd like that too. As I watched him walk away, I realized some doors never fully close. And perhaps, sometimes, what breaks can be rebuilt, different, but whole again. Colin called to cancel our Sunday brunch 3 hours before we were meant to meet, his voice carrying the clipped tones of professional disappointment. There's been an issue with Mitchell's team, he explained, not quite masking his irritation. Something about inconsistencies in the Singapore reports. I've called an emergency meeting. I murmured appropriate sympathies while relief washed through me like a cleansing tide. The universe had granted me a reprieve, time to untangle the complicated web of emotions Mitchell's return had stirred. 2 weeks later, I stood in the hushed gallery of the Westmore, watching visitors drift from one photograph to another. My exhibition, Fragments, the Architecture of Memory, had drawn unexpected attention from critics and collectors alike. They're extraordinary, Mitchell's voice came from behind me. He gestured toward a triptych of abandoned buildings reclaimed by nature. You've captured something essential here, beauty in what's broken, life persisting through ruin. When I turned, I found him holding my grandmother's box, its constellation inlay catching the gallery lights. I found this when unpacking, I told him, accepting it from his hands. I never opened it after that night. I meant what I said, Iris. It's yours, regardless of what happens between us. I opened the lid, studying the opal ring nestled inside. My grandmother told me opals were like people, complex, with fire hidden beneath the surface, revealing different sides depending on how you look at them. Mitchell's eyes held mine, understanding flowing between us. People can change how they're seen, he said softly. If they're willing to turn toward the light differently. I slipped the ring onto my right hand, not a promise of forever, but an acknowledgement of history, of possibility. Colin appeared at the gallery entrance, his expression darkening when he spotted Mitchell. He'd been persistent despite my increasing distance, unwilling to accept that what had barely begun between us was already ending. We have choices to make, I told Mitchell, watching Colin approach. About who we want to be, about second chances. Mitchell nodded, stepping back respectfully. I'll be here, he said simply. When you're ready. As I turned to greet Colin, I felt the weight of the ring on my finger, not a burden, but a reminder. Some things break irreparably. Others transform, their fractures filled with gold, becoming more beautiful for having been broken. I didn't know yet which category Mitchell and I would fall into. But for the first time in 4 years, I was willing to find out.